Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Sure. My name is Rick DellaRatta. I'm here in Times Square, Manhattan, and I'm known to some people as, a musician, a jazz artist, but maybe to most people at this point in my journey, I'm also known as the founder of Jazz for Peace.
Great. And can you go ahead and we talk about your past leading up into your present?
Sure. I don't know how far you want me to go back. I did start out as a paper boy.
Let's talk about that.
Okay. So, I started out like most kids trying to make a little money, to spend their allowance or whatever it is. So I was delivering the papers and I was doing okay with that. I was riding on a bike and I would ride with no hands. I would crack the paper and fling it at the door.
Yes.
So it was fun. I was doing okay. It was fun to ride no hands. Problem was every now and then I would break a screen door. Then I'd have to pay to fix the door. So there were a couple weeks I lost money on my paper route, but outside of that, it all good. But then what happened, Kimberly, was I was studying music, and my homeroom teacher, his sons had a band. He wanted me to play in their son's band to play the school dances. Then there was a grown-up band. They wanted me to play with them. They promised my mother they would pick me up and bring me home, make sure I didn't drink too much, sneak me in and out of the grown-up places. So they got my mother to go along with that. And then my mother really dropped the hammer on me when she asked me to take over for her as the church organist.
Oh, wow.
So,
Can you define what a church organist is?
well, if you go to like these, just regular old time religions, like the Catholic religion or the Protestant religion or the Episcopalian, these religions, they go back centuries in time. And if you go in those churches, you'll see these giant pipe organs. This is before electricity, and the giant pipes, and the sound comes out of the pipe and through the air. And they're amazing instruments, actually, some of them in some of these churches. And this one too, it was like a pipe organ in a church. And I took some organ lessons too. And
Is that different? Can I cut you off real quick? Is that different than any other type of music instrument, a pipe organ? Because it's actually a spiritual thing if it's in churches. So tell me about that.
Well, you have to realize, how do musicians make a living, right? And if you look through time, there are different, ways that they made a living through parts of history. There were certain times, like the time of Johann Sebastian Bach, let's say. I believe that was the 1700s or whatever, 1600s even, okay? 1600s or whatever. Man, you had to have a job in the church in order to, you couldn't, there were, they didn't have a nightclub for you to play in. They didn't have recordings. You couldn't make a record. You couldn't stream anything, forget all that. So when Johann Sebastian Bach was alive, they didn't even have a piano. The piano hadn't even been invented. So he played, he made a living in the church, and I believe he had like 10 kids, so he must have done pretty well to pay for all them kids. I doubt any of them went to Harvard, but Harvard wasn't invented then either. You know what I mean? So it was what it was, and so it's had a long history. Religion has a long history with music just in general, and let's keep it that way because there's a lot of great music you can hear in churches. I played a concert in Haiti. And this guy invited me to his church that sponsored me with the bed and breakfast that I stayed in. And it was phenomenal. And he wanted me to play, but the music was so all over the world. There's great music you can hear in churches.
And continue from being in a church, working part time. What else did you do? What's the rest of your past leading up into your present?
Well, from once I quit that paper route, Kimberly, that was it for the day job world. It was all music from there on. But I did, by the time I got into school, I was playing in, I wanted to play any kind. I loved all kinds of music. I especially loved the music that the kids at school, we were listening on the radio. So I love that music. I
What
know.
was on the radio during the time that you were younger? Who was the key players on the radio?
Well, that very first band that I played in, the homeroom teacher's sons, we were playing songs by Grand Funk Railroad, by Yeah, by Elton John. Yeah, by oh man, I mean, and then the grown-up band was playing stuff older because they were for grown-ups, so we were playing stuff by Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry and all that stuff. And then of course came in the disco era, and to be honest with you, I got a crazy call. I was still underage now, and I get this call from a disco band, and they needed a keyboard player, and I took an overnight bus from Schenectady, New York to Savannah, Georgia to meet these guys, and they took me in some house where they were staying, and we rehearsed for like 3 or 4 days, and then we were on the road playing the Bee Gees and all those disco hits that you remember from the disco era. We were a live band playing that music, and they were trying to get me not to go to school because I had to go to New England Conservatory that fall, and they were hoping to like talk me out of that, keep me in the band, but then it's I mean, I played every single kind of music, and so that's why nowadays I do sometimes to bring, because I play in a lot of podcasts. They're not jazz podcasts, but I'm going to play jazz on it for the podcast. So I will sometimes mix in another style to like keep the people with me. You know what I mean? So that I don't lose them. I keep them focused on what I'm doing.
So basically, what you do right now is you play jazz worldwide, you do it for peace, basically, right?
Well, here's what happened. I was on a rooftop on the day of 9/11. I was here in New York, and I was living down on the Lower West Side. I'm in Times Square now, but I was living down on the Lower West Side, and I was less than a quarter of a mile away from the World Trade Center at that time. And I got a phone call. Hey, there was a person who took pictures of me the day before. And if you ever see the Jazz for Peace CD, the cover of that CD was taken on the 10th of September. The next day was 9/11. Yep. So like some go to the World Trade Center, the woman was all up in arms. I said, look, let me just go up on the roof and just see, it's probably someone flew a kite into there. Who the heck knows what somebody did, come on. So I went up there, and it was like walking into a movie. It's like you got it from your seat and just walked in the screen, So I had nothing to show for that except a poem called Jazz for Peace. So now I had to walk the walk. You know what I mean? Everyone else was talking the talk, but I'm like, I really can walk the walk because I play music, and I know from traveling all over the world that you can unite people through music. It's a common denominator. It breaks through every kind of barrier, cultural barriers, social barriers, religious barriers, language barriers, you name it, music can cross it.
What makes your music different, your jazz different than Kenny G or whoever? What makes yours different?
My music embodies a famous quote. If you Google, and it's actually my quote, if you Google Rick DellaRatta, famous quote, and just put that into Google, you'll see this quote all over the place because I was interviewed getting ready for the first Jazz for Peace concert after I had recited the poem again in Savannah, Georgia. It was a strange thing. I was at the Savannah Jazz Festival after 9/11, and I just happened to say to the guy interviewing me, listen, he said, what do you think we should do? What do you think, is wrong with the world? I said, listen, if we would just fill up our souls with our greatest qualities, creativity, artistry, humanity, intellectuality, if we would just fill our souls up with that, we would have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. Now, why are we slipping up right now a lot? Because if you look at history and you look at people like Johann Sebastian Bach and all kinds of people from all different ages, you'll see that music was not only used to sell beer and entertain people. Do you know what I'm saying? It was used for all kinds of ways, spiritual ways, thought-provoking ways, all kinds of ways. So my music is an attempt to live up to my famous quote so that you won't just hear, something that's going to sell a product or something that's just going to entertain you. I want to stimulate your intellect.
Before you continue, can we hear for 2 minutes? I'm gonna time it, and I'm gonna go like this when it's 2 minutes up. Can we hear a piece of your music for 2 minutes? Can you play us something?
Okay, I could do that. Well, what I do is I just make it up. as I
It's okay. I love that.
Okay. So I'll start out with something like a melody, and then I will go into an improvisation that I just make up. So you'll have to, I'll look for your sign, but I'll just be making it up, okay?
Okay, and I'll just be dancing, okay?
I sing this little song and then I feel you in my heart. That's how I know I love you. For in my heart a sun that shines, the rain won't stop, the clouds won't hide this love I feel for you. And every time this song I sing, I smell the flowers of the spring. As every little day goes by, they keep on blooming in your eyes. I sing this little song because this feeling is so strong. And now I know I love you. Just you, just me. Let's find a cozy spot to cuddle and coo. Just us, just we. I've missed an awful lot. My trouble is you. Oh gee, what are your charms for? What are my arms for? Use your imagination. Just you, just me. I'll tie lovers knot round wonderful you.
Mr. DellaRatta, Mr. DellaRatta, thank you. Thank you so much. You are spiritually intertwined with music, and what you wrote, which you made up, is spiritually embedded in you. Music is you, and that's what makes you different than everybody. Some people learn how to read music, some people just play music, but you're spiritually intertwined with the music. I can tell you play on our minds spiritually, with the music you put out through the piano. So thank you. It's beautiful.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
So now that you do this, how many places have you played at?
You know, just Africa alone, I've been to 9 times.
Cool.
So that's just Africa. So I mean, you're out. Were you in California?
I'm actually in Washington State right now.
Washington State. I mean, I must have been to Seattle maybe a dozen times because there was a club there called Tula's that loved Jazz for Peace. And every time, somebody, an outstanding cause, they were like, hey, you can have it here. Just tell them to come down and talk to us. I played in Bellevue, a beautiful,
Beautiful. It is. I go to my
there's a
radio
beautiful
station.
concert hall in Bellevue. And when you're on that turnpike or whatever, you pass it and there's a big sign. And one day, if you drove by there, it said Jazz for Peace, Rick DellaRatta Jazz for Peace. And we did a concert in that hall. And I remember the people were so happy. One reason I kept doing it, to be honest with you, Kimberly, is the letters that I got from all of the people, because they love the music, because, actually they're not even accustomed to hearing music for the sake of music. And they're not really even accustomed to hearing someone play their own style of music or their own sound or something that comes just from them. So they're more used to, they're used to what society's been giving them. And they're so happy to be, getting something different from Jazz for Peace, but also they love the way that all the concerts are for outstanding causes. So it's benefiting their cause, fulfilling their dream, helping them get from where they are now closer to where they need to be. And when they do that, they're fulfilling and making their communities better. So it's a big change. What you see now you finally see what we knew all the time. And that is the music industry is not beneficial to communities and to families and to, the average person. They go there and they buy a ticket to some rap show or whatever, and they don't know where that money's going. And it doesn't come back around to their communities and to them. And so now people hopefully can say, hey, wait a minute, we haven't had Jazz for Peace here. I want to try Jazz for Peace and see if they can do the magic for our community that they've done for all these other places.
Speaking of that, tell us about the reviews you got, not only for the mayor of New York City, but from the great, Barack Obama, the president. What did they actually say in their reviews? And tell me many more, but just those two starting out.
When I got a letter from Michael Bloomberg, I was doing a concert that day to assist Holocaust survivors, and it was a home for Holocaust survivors that needed to expand their services. Partially because, there were less and less Holocaust survivors, period. And, there were other people that they needed to assist and they wanted to expand their services. And, from there, he already knew. I don't know if he knew that. He knew I was playing concerts all around town. And he just sent a letter describing what we did. And I was shocked that anybody was watching us and knowing what we did. And these people were reading it to the audience, and my band members, we were sitting at a table, they'd given us some food and they were all talking. And I was like, will you guys shut up for 1 second? And they wouldn't. So I had to get up and go and listen to what he said. And they said, that's from the mayor. And here he wrote it to you. And there's your letter. And they gave it to me. So I didn't know. I was the first time I got one. I was, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know I was going to get more. But then as I kept going, I started getting them from, Barack Obama, who wrote one of the most eloquent letters ever that Jazz for Peace has received. So we have it online. It's jazzforpeace.org/Obama-letter.pdf. If anybody wants to read it, I couldn't quote it verbatim because I don't know, but it's fit up. But you know what he quoted? He was smart enough to quote our United Nations concert. And he wanted me to know how important a cultural event it was for me to bring Palestinians, Israelis, and Americans together at the United Nations and perform music together in harmony. And he was up on it.
You performed at the United Nations?
So yes.
My God.
Yeah. So here's what happened, Kimberly. After I told you, I was kind of launched by the press. DellaRatta starts concert out with Jazz for Peace. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I started doing concerts around New York City. While I was doing them, I just asked my manager, I said, I've always wanted to do this. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I've always wanted to do it because I knew that Palestinians and Israelis got along because I play with them. They come here to study jazz and I play with them in the same room. And I tell people, they're like, well, aren't those guys supposed to be at war? I said, well, they're not warring on my bandstand. So I said, go through the prompts to the United Nations and tell them I want to do this. Tell them who I am, blah, blah, blah. And one day she said, I got this thing. I said, listen, if that came through, make sure there's an Israeli and a Palestinian in that band. I don't care if the other musicians are from China. You know what I mean? You got to have one Israeli, one Palestinian, and then from wherever else, if you want Europe. One guy was from Vienna, I think, from different, fine, but make sure you have that going. So when I had that going, a lot of people didn't pick up on it, but Barack Obama did. And in his letter and other people's letters, he specifically said, I want you to know that what you did that day at the United Nations was extraordinary. Now, if everybody else had picked up on it, we wouldn't be in this pickle that we're in right now, which is why Jazz for Peace is now being called on, because people know that they were right. They were right 23 years ago, and we better start listening to Jazz for Peace. And how do you bring them together? Well, I bring them together through music. And not only that, I happen to be talking to Israelis and Palestinians all the time. So I know what it takes to bring them together. And I actually know, and we have a proposal, and that proposal is finally getting some recognition. I just heard from someone in the parliament of the Ukraine wrote me and said, this proposal is like what, I can't remember the exact words again, but we have the quotes, and it was just like, this is very interesting. It was kind of like that. This Jazz for Peace thing is very interesting, So like I said, we are we're in the mix to solve that problem. And I think we have the best, proposal. And not only that, there was a vote on that proposal with two other proposals, and Jazz for Peace proposal won 96-4. 96% of the people chose the Jazz for Peace proposal. And so, so that's what's going on right now. Can
I ask you a question, Rick?
Yeah.
When you create this music, what do you be thinking in your, that's very, I can't explain it. When you have music to the T down packed through your mind and just distributing it through your fingers, it shows that you're spiritual being. To me, I look at that as angelic. So what do you be thinking about when you disperse? To be at the United Nations and get a response from the mayor, the president, and many others shows that they see you as angelic and bringing people together, a positive person. So tell me, what be on your mind when you create? I know you don't think about like the ground. You think about spiritual ways. You like, how can I help these people? Like, what do you think about?
Well, let me tell you, because if everybody did it, you'd be shocked at the results we would get, because I'm a believer that the last thing you need is a handful of people trying to fix something that it's going to take the whole world to fix. But if you involve everybody in the world, you can fix everything in the world if you involve everybody, because you don't know. It could be the guy selling fruit down 21 stores below me that has a better idea. Let the cream rise to the top. So here's what I did in this instance, okay? I started out with a melody that I wrote. It's called Little Song. And you heard me say, I sing this little song because this feeling is so strong. And now I know I love you. Now, I started with that melody because our slogan with this Middle East conflict is Jazz for Peace. The final solution is love. So I said, I love you. I want you to know that there is love. There is love amongst Israelis and Palestinians, because I saw it on my bandstand. I saw it at the United Nations. If you go to the webpage, you'll see the description from these musicians who wrote their viewpoint of what I was doing in the event. So you can read it from the actual people. Anyway, I went from there into a Thelonious Monk song, who's one of the greats, came here out in New York, and his street, I could walk up the street to a street that's named after him. Anyway, Thelonious Monk Boulevard. Anyway, it's called Evidence. And the reason I went into that is because Jazz for Peace is providing evidence that neither the common people of Israel or Palestine Palestine. Neither the common people of Israel or Palestine are interested in this war. Actually, they voted against it. The Palestinian people. So there's somebody who wants war, but it's not the people. It's not the common people of Israel or Palestine. And they're trying to make it look like those two people are at war. Therefore, we can run this agenda. Well, I'm sorry. Those two people aren't at war. Tell us what your agenda is if you want, but don't try to blame it on them because they just voted 96% against wanting this war escalated or even continued and in favor of the jazz for peace. So that I went to evidence. From there, what I did then is I did something which you want to call angelic. I refused to think, okay? I opened a channel and I opened up a channel and I allowed anything to come through me. And you know, the way I really started doing this, I mean, we did it anyway as part of, you know, just our studies with music and all that stuff. But I got to the point in my journey where people would sit down to hear me play, you know, like a social setting, and they knew I'd been to Rwanda. You know what I mean? They knew I'd been to Pakistan. They knew I'd been to India. They knew I'd been all over the country. And, you know, they knew I'd had all these experiences. And I'd say, what do you want to hear? And they'd say, I just want you to play because I want to hear what's, you know what I mean? I want to hear all of that, whatever's going to come. So in other words, I'm allowing, if it's a rhythm from Ghana that influence, it's going to come out. If it could be anything that's going to come out, but I launch it from something familiar. And so that's what I did. I gave you those familiar things that are tied to our theme today. And then I just launched from that into whatever came through the channel.
You know, they have voice recognition right now, artificial intelligence, and peep where I'm going with this. You know, people have special, each and every one of us have our own unique voice, and you have a unique voice. And combining that with, you know, playing jazz or everything that you ever played, in singing, you have a voice, you know, and you drew people to you. And I know I keep saying that, but that's a powerful thing. So, you know, keep going. Where do you see yourself going in the future, Rick, with this?
Well, I hope to basically, you know, I hope that people will look at what we did at the United Nations on that day 23 years ago and say, you know what, let's not wait 23 more years to listen to what Rick DellaRatta has to offer today to solve our problems. Because what happened in our journey is we started to realize solutions from, so a solution that might have come from helping an outstanding cause in Tanzania branding their indigenous products, or a solution that might have come from helping save turtles in Mexico. You know, now we have solutions. So if somebody wants to know, hey, we got technology taking away these jobs, how are we going to turn that into a positive? I can tell you how I think we can do that. And what if it's as good as the idea I had at the United Nations? Then don't wait 23 years. Let's see if we can implement it now. I'm giving you the information. You know what I mean? Why not listen? Why not implement it? If you want to know, again, if you want to know how to solve that Israeli conflict, I can tell you. If you want to know, how to solve the problems with philanthropy in a trickle-down economy where the people who need the money are getting it last to do good deeds, I will tell you.
How do you see any young people, what whippersnappers going like where you have, like going to heights where you have reached? Do you see anybody younger than you that wants to follow your footsteps?
Well, I think what's going on right now is if you look at young people are looking at the world and they're seeing something similar to me because they're not in gated communities and they're not in grandfathered situations where they have their 401k and their retirement or their pension. Do you know what I'm saying? Because those people can get a little bit out of touch because they might not see what's actually going on. These people are looking at today and tomorrow, and they're like, we don't see a future for ourselves in this setup. So we've got to get this setup rearranged in such a way that it is nurturing and that it is positive. So I do believe young people could provide an extraordinarily valuable piece of the puzzle to help our system. And again, Jazz for Peace would like to work with them.
Maybe, you should, I don't know, you've done plenty of things, but what if you can start up some type of webinar or in-person thing where you are able to get the good kids together that wants to follow your footsteps and tell them how you did it and what you can help them do. Does that sound like a good idea?
Well, let me tell you exactly how we can do that, okay? Jazz for Peace is similar to a tree, and so is our funding model. If you look behind you are trees, you'll never see a tree that looks exactly like another one. There's no twin trees. There's no identical twins in the tree world. They're all different, and there's billions of them, but still they find a way to be different from another one. They're all unique. They're all different. Well, Jazz for Peace is unique in the way we grow, because we don't look at what we want to do and try to do it. We look at the passion that's within the people that we're working with, whether it be volunteers, whether it be outstanding causes. So what we would do in your instance, and see, that's why we can say yes to anything. We can say yes to anything if there's that third person who has the passion. So for example, this book that's blowing everybody away, okay, this book only exists because I had people telling me for years, you got to write a book. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. You got to write a book. The first podcast I was on was called American Authors and Others. And he had me on 3 episodes because he said, I can't cover it all in one episode. I got to do one on you. I got to do one on the music of Jazz for Peace. And I have to do one on the Jazz for Peace, the mission, all that. 3. I said, why are you even having me on? Oh, I don't even have a book. You're all American authors. Everyone's authors on his book. Not even me. He said, you will have a book. Years later, one of our volunteers had written an article. The article got over 12,000 views. And I went to that volunteer and I said, you know what? You have a passion for writing. Oh, yeah, I love that. It was so great writing that article. I said, what do you think about a book? And she was like you, lighting up the way you lit up with your idea. That would be fantastic. So now you've got the passion of the author. You see what I mean? And I ran with that. So that's how that grew. I don't, if I don't have somebody who has the passion, we can't grow. But with you, you could work with us on this idea of yours, and we could get a webinar going just working with you. Do you see what I'm saying? If you have that passion, listen, we provide the way for those who have the will. So if you wanted to do that, we'll work with you on that.
I would love to. And another thing, children to adulthood, they have stories. Each and everyone has a channel, like you said earlier, and has a story. Just imagine what they can bring to the table, telling their story through their music and what they think about, and try to share with their audience in a positive way, like you do.
You're 100% right. And I'll tell you something, all I can do is cross my fingers and hope that you actually go forward with that thought, because if you do, Jazz for Peace will take that as far to the highest heights that you can imagine.
I hate to say this, but how can the people reach you?
Well, a great way to reach us, when I was telling you earlier about our empowerment tree, funding with Jazz for Peace, believe it or not, starts with a comment. And the comment represents a seedling, which we then grow into roots. And then we get a confirmed event, and then we grow branches such as local business sponsors, publicity and awareness, new and prestigious supporters, fundraising techniques, all kinds of stuff. So you can reach us anytime just by sending an email to info@jazzforpeace.org. Now, if you want to find out about us, one way to do it is check out this podcast. And then you can, of course, always Google things, Rick DellaRatta famous quote, or rickdellarata.com, jazzforpeace.org, etc. You shouldn't have any trouble finding us.
Well said. Stay on the line. Everybody that is watching, please give him a round of applause. He's been done wonderful things, and we're taking politics and shoving them on the side just to hear who has been writing him, like about his greatness. He is a wonderful person, and he has a channel that he explores with a lot of people so that they can come calm down from hate and hate speech and everything negative, and turn it around into a positive. So I thank him for showing up, and I thank him, and I apologize for being late. So you guys take care, be safe, and I'll be back on here later. Stay on the line, Rick. Hold on.